Welcome to the FASEB webinar on maximizing shared research resources. We'll be starting in just a few minutes to give people a few more moments to fully log on. Thanks. Hello and welcome to the FASEB webinar on shared research resources. I'm Bethany Draman, Senior Science Policy Analyst, Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. I'm also joined today with Sheena Mache. She's the Assistant Professor of Pathology and the Senior Director of Advanced Research Technologies at NYU Langone. Today's webinar agenda will provide you with some brief background on the report and how we got here. And then we'll go into some details about the report, including the benefits of resource sharing and our findings and recommendations for how to improve them. And at the end, we will have a Q&A period. You're welcome to submit a question at any time for the Q&A period. On your screen, you should see a box that looks like this. If you don't, you should at least see the smaller gray box with the orange arrow on it. If you push that, it will expand for the rest of that. Then under the tab that says questions, just expand that, write your questions in the box and hit send, and we'll be able to see anything you ask. FASEB, or the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology, federation of 31 scientific societies representing over 130,000 researchers. Our mission is to advance health and welfare by promoting progress and education in biological and biomedical science through service to our member societies and collaborative advocacy. These are our 31 member societies. You are probably familiar with at least some of them, and hopefully members of one or more as well. And now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Mache.
So why is FASEB interested in shared resources? In January 2015, FASEB issued the report Sustaining Discovery in Biological and Biomedical Sciences, which documented a decline in research funding, while conversely the number of grant applicants and research costs had increased. The research enterprise that has yielded so much in the past and that offers so much promise for the future is under tremendous strain. FASEB's recommendations included a call for enhanced deployment and use of shared resources to extend the value of funding and provide greater access to new technologies and costly instruments. To address that recommendation, FASEB established the Shared Research Resources Subcommittee. The subcommittee's initial efforts included creating a list of federal shared instrumentation grants, a statement calling for appropriate acknowledgement of shared resources and facilities, and a database of U.S. providers of U.S. research organisms. You might have noticed that 2 of these 3 projects were focused on determining what exists in the shared resource space. That is because the subcommittee's discussions demonstrated again and again how varied our experiences were in this field and how little we knew about what was going on outside of our own institutions. Therefore, the subcommittee developed a survey tool to establish some baseline data. We hope that it would also enable us to better understand policy issues affecting shared resources and inform our future activities. After several months spent designing the survey tool, we launched the survey in early January last year and closed it in early March. The survey sought the perspectives of both resource users and resource providers on issues such as current needs, facility usage, sources of funding, and training and careers. We received 751 complete responses. Among non-facility associated respondents, 73% reported NIH support. Respondents worked in 45 U.S. states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. Survey participants also included membership in 29 of 30 FASEB societies, which demonstrates the breadth of research fields represented. Our survey divided the user and provider community into 5 primary groups: facility staff, facility directors, PIs and faculty, laboratory staff, and trainees, as shown in this table. After careful review of the survey results and many lengthy discussions, the subcommittee identified several key challenges and developed 10 recommendations. The recommendations, survey analysis, and complete summary results can be accessed on the FASEB website. I would especially like to thank the survey respondents whose participation and insights were essential to this project, FASEB member societies which circulated the survey and the report among their membership, the Shared Research Resources Subcommittee members who led this effort, and the FASEB Board of Directors and Science Policy Committee that oversaw the effort and provided valuable feedback as it progressed. Back to you, Bethany.
Thank you. Now we'll get into some of the initial findings of this survey and report. First thing that really stood out to us was the results reinforced the value of shared resources to the research enterprise, from greater access to cost efficiency, scientific rigor, and so much more. We recognize that shared resource facilities create a level playing field for all investigators by reducing the technical and knowledgeable barriers to implementing appropriate research approaches to answering important questions. It should go without saying that shared resources increase access to advanced technologies, and that's what we saw in the survey results. Among laboratory researchers, which include PIs, laboratory staff, and trainees, 78% considered specialized instrumentation to be essential to their work. When asked what other instruments or resources they would most like to use in their research, respondents frequently described those that are provided through facilities, such as electron microscopes and mass spectrometers. We were also surprised to see just how many facilities investigators use in the course of their research. 80% had utilized at least 3 different facilities within the past year alone. This graph shows the proportion of respondents who use various types of facilities, from departmental cores all the way up to national labs. We also found that investigators in UPSCOR eligible states were more likely to utilize local facilities, such as institutional and departmental cores, and less likely to use national or regional facilities as compared to respondents in non-UPSCOR states. Resource sharing also generates real cost savings. Among investigators able to estimate costs, 65% of them found that facility costs were lower than performing the equivalent work in their own laboratory. We also observed that many facilities are working towards greater efficiency. Among facility respondents, 39% said that their unit had undertaken some form of facility coordination or consolidation within the past 5 years. Now I hand it back to Sheena.
Facilities also promote scientific rigor. As specialized providers, core facilities have the capability to achieve a high degree of consistency for each procedure, maintain detailed records of extrinsic factors that might affect results, and validate materials. Compared to laboratory staff and trainees, facility staff were more likely to report that 1, their laboratories maintained validation protocols for all frequently used materials and protocols, and 2, that they had received training for all of the instruments and equipment they operate. With more robust systems in place to assure research quality, it is not surprising that core facility scientists were also more confident in their ability to determine which resources require validation or calibration, as shown in this graph. And shared resource core facilities offer many other benefits. A number of important technology advances and protocol improvements were developed in core facilities by core scientists. In fact, technology advancement is a primary objective of the P41 centers. Core facilities are a nexus for collaboration and team science. Core scientists also are well positioned to serve as a point of introduction between investigators with overlapping research interests. And finally, core facilities play an important role in training researchers. 82% of surveyed core facilities offer assistance with experimental design, 74% provide training, and 40% supply other consultative services. In addition, 86% of core facility staff consider teaching to be a highly or moderately important skill for running a core. Research institutions, universities, academic medical centers, and independent research institutes are realizing the important role that shared resource cores play in their ability to conduct cutting-edge research, recruit and retain strong faculty members, and to compete for external research funding. However, shared resource providers face a variety of challenges that limit their ability to consistently offer cutting-edge services to scientists. By addressing these issues and challenges, we can derive even greater value from resource sharing. There is a role for all stakeholders in improving how we deploy, support, manage, and utilize shared resources. Bethany?
So while we documented many benefits of sharing resources, as Sheena mentioned, there are a number of challenges that limit the impact of shared resources. And in our survey analysis, we grouped them into 4 key areas where we saw real potential for improvement. And those 4 are listed on the screen, and we're going to go through each of those areas. The first area was funding and business operations. With stable and predictable budgets, facilities are enabled to operate efficiently and maintain high standards. This in turn reduces the cost of conducting cutting-edge research and provides greater reliability to users. However, facility financial situations were frequently described as unstable or strained, with many respondents noting that it affected the quality, range, and cost of services provided. 31% of facility personnel also indicated that their facility's annual income was moderately or highly variable. Much of this instability is likely due to how we support facilities, which is an uneven patchwork. Every sponsor and institution offers different levels of support for different types of facility expenses using different mechanisms. For example, we observed 26 of the 27 possible response combinations to our survey question on what degree a participant's home institution supports non-billable operation overhead, service contacts, and capital equipment costs. This variability is also observed at the federal level. In the graph on the right, you can see that center program project grants were the most commonly reported type of direct NIH support to facilities. However, research grants were the dominant form of support from other agencies to these facilities. Likewise, we identified variability in what facility costs were being supported through these different grant programs. Some instrumentation programs cover the cost of service contracts, while similar programs at other agencies do not. This high variation leads to gaps in support and unnecessary duplication. So what can be done? Well, first, we must create better business models for facilities and make them more sustainable. Institutions can help by increasing the financial stability of their own or facilities. To do so, they can start by establishing a dedicated fund for shared resources, centralizing administrative functions for core facilities, enabling facilities to offer services to outside groups, and seeking state funding for research infrastructure. FASEB also recommends enhancing the shared resource funding programs. Respondents often voice concern that federal grant programs are not taking full advantage of existing resources, and instead we're chasing the hot new idea, leading to boom and bust cycles for individual types of resources. We recommend that sponsors start by reviewing and realigning shared resource programs with investigator demand and the existing infrastructure. In addition, sponsors can explore ways to encourage grant recipients to use shared resources when appropriate and collaborate with other sponsors and coordinate those funding programs. I'll hand it back to Sheena for the next area.
So, discoverability and access. Without robust ways to identify the many resource options available, investigators are limited in what resources they can use. In our survey, 95% of investigators indicated that they would ask colleagues for recommendations when seeking a new core. This option beat out all other approaches by a wide margin, including consulting institutional lists, national databases, and online searches. Many also reported that their institution did little to help researchers find internal resources. Once identified, access may remain a challenge. 49% reported that they had wanted to use a core within the last 5 years, but had been unable to do so. The most frequently cited barrier was cost. Both users and providers described the catch-22 cycle of not being able to afford facility fees to gather pilot data for a grant application, and thus being unable to secure a grant to support their facility use. Other barriers included insufficient capacity, difficulty locating a core, and limitations on who could actually use the core. Making it easier to find and use shared resources can increase efficiency. At a national level, FASEB recommends establishing a database of shared resource facilities. There have been several previous efforts, including the ABRF Core Marketplace and Eagle Eye, but neither is comprehensive or well used. ABRF is investing in improvements to their core marketplace, so with broader support of this effort, we might end up with a nice, robust national database. Institutions can leverage their investments in shared resources and make their research programs more competitive by connecting researchers with internal resources. Low-cost efforts include creating and maintaining a user-friendly resource list, conducting outreach to investigators, and offering facility vouchers and startup packages and bridge funding. To expand the technologies available to their investigators, institutions should also consider establishing cooperative agreements to access facilities located at neighboring institutions, and, as appropriate, partnering with them to create regional facilities. This might involve interinstitutional agreements that waive F&A and work out liability to promote in-house rates. And finally, research sponsors should consider funding mechanisms to reduce fees for investigators that are currently unfunded or located at less research-intensive institutions. Bethany?
Clearly, cores need to be facile to meet the evolving research needs of our scientific workforce. Directors must replace or upgrade equipment, develop staff expertise, and develop and implement new protocols and workflows. However, many surveyed directors struggle to secure funding to purchase or replace equipment. Most facilities, including institutional core facilities, are prohibited from funding acquisition through an internal operating surplus, and are thus dependent on either outside funding or institutional capitalization. Survey respondents often stated that the federal instrumentation programs are too small to meet existing needs, and several respondents indicated that their institution was unable or unwilling to capitalize instrumentation costs. To then maximize the useful lifespan of equipment, directors must also secure support for maintenance and repair, training, and future upgrades. Unfortunately, sources for funding of these activities are even more sparse than for acquisition, which can ultimately diminish the value of the original investment in that instrument. Furthermore, institutional support and oversight of cores is often handled in an ad hoc manner, which can lead to unnecessary duplication and poor allocation of institutional funds for expensive resources. Ultimately, long-term planning and greater coordination at all levels, federal, regional, institutional, departmental, and individual facilities, could lead to more efficient use of the available funds we have for resources. Through joint planning at the federal level, agencies can better identify and avoid gaps in support. Institutions need to include shared resources in their strategic planning. This can help ensure appropriate deployment and support of internal resources, as well as establish institutional knowledge management. In addition, FASEB recommends creating a central oversight committee to ensure continued alignment, productivity, and financial solvency of institutional cores and other institutional resources. Finally, core scientists must regularly communicate with their user base to identify emerging needs and ensure their facilities remain user-centered. This includes keeping up with developments in their field and incorporating them into the range of services provided. Institutions can help with this by ensuring that core scientists have sufficient protected time to carry out these important, but often not billable, activities. Gina?
Facility directors, core scientists, and technical staff all play key roles in advancing scientific knowledge, and they personify the ethos of collaborative sharing. Their scientific expertise is vital to providing the quality services that investigators have come to expect. However, this career track is often overlooked and inadequately supported, making it difficult to recruit and retain skilled personnel. Survey participants attributed high staff turnover to uncompetitive compensation packages, job insecurity, and limited opportunities for advancement. There was also little support for staff development. Several respondents described difficulty securing funds to send just a single staff member to a single scientific meeting. Furthermore, failures to acknowledge core scientists' contributions to research projects reduces their ability to effectively advocate for themselves and for their core. While having a dedicated facility director is often essential for running larger cores, those individuals often do not have comparable career opportunities as those who had remained in the PI faculty track. Survey results show that facility directors who did not also operate a separate research laboratory, shown here in the dark blue bars, were rarely in a tenured or tenure track position. This stark difference was observed even when controlling for career stage or faculty appointment. The research community must take steps to ensure appropriate recognition of core facilities and their staff. For investigators, this includes acknowledgement in all relevant scientific communications and considering whether co-authorship is warranted. Professionalizing the core facility career track would increase retention of talented individuals. Most importantly, institutions should establish a professional track with a clear advancement pathway for core scientists. A professional track attracts higher caliber motivated staff, and it reduces turnover, ultimately yielding higher quality science. Research sponsors can help by creating funding mechanisms specific to core facility directors and staff, as well as training and development grants for core personnel. And individual researchers and scientific societies can work to increase awareness and recognition of core facility scientists as a viable professional career. Bethany?
As you've heard, a number of our recommendations are targeting research sponsors, institutions, and facilities, but there are many ways individual investigators can help to maximize the value of shared research resources. Because shared resources benefit the entire research community, we all, not just core scientists, need to advocate for the effective and efficient deployment, support, and use of them. Through professional societies, investigators can work to elevate the status and professional recognition of core scientist careers. Consider how they are represented at your meetings and in your leadership. Is there a role for them there? At your institution, please first take a moment to share the FASEB report with your leadership. If you have not already downloaded the report, it is available under the Handouts tab on this webinar menu. Institutions are increasingly recognizing the need for greater coordination and strategic planning around resources, and this report can provide a good starting point for those discussions. In addition, support training programs for shared resource scientists, call for the development of an institution-wide strategic plan for research resources, and include core scientists in more institutional activities and on more committees. And where can you include core scientists? All over the place. Recruitment committees are a great way for potential recruits to learn about what core facilities your institution has to offer and connect them immediately. But you also want to include them on your strategic planning committees so you can plan for your future resource needs. As mentioned before, cores provide a great place for training, and so consider incorporating core scientists as guest lecturers in your courses. Bringing them in and to planning your orientation programs for trainees as well as faculty will also help connect them early on to what resources are already available to them. And of course, always take some time to discuss your research aims and resource needs with your local facility personnel. They may have ideas and suggestions you might not have thought of. Gina?
Core directors and core scientists are all scientists and experts in their field. When they make a substantial intellectual and/or experimental contribution to a publication, they deserve to be acknowledged or included as co-author. Institutions and sponsors measure acknowledgements and use them to inform decisions affecting funding and career advancement. Thus, through proper acknowledgement and authorship, investigators play a critical role in ensuring their continued availability and future development. Co-authorship and acknowledgement also contributes to the rigorous and transparent reporting of research methodologies and results. And a quote from Ruth Angeletti from a 1999 FASEB Journal article: "Intellectual interactions between resource and research scientists are essential to the success of each project. When this success results in publication, a citation in the acknowledgement section of a manuscript may be appropriate for routine analysis. However, contributions from resource scientists that involve novel resource laboratory work and insight, experimental design, or advanced data analysis that make a publication possible or significantly enhance its value require co-authorship as appropriate acknowledgement." Researchers can also help transform how the next generation views shared resources and the professionals who provide them. So, lead by example. Collaborate with and acknowledge core scientists. Likewise, support authorship policies that include shared resource scientists based on their contributions. Serve on mentoring committees for core facility scientist promotion and review. And finally, teach trainees how to find shared resources, including institutional as well as national resources. This will help prepare trainees to become independent researchers. Bethany?
FASEB remains committed to working on this important policy issue. The Shared Research Resources Subcommittee is exploring what metrics facilities and their institutions might use to inform decision-making around shared resources, from determining what new types of shared resources are needed at the institution and which should be sunsetted, as well as promotion of core scientists and so forth. We are also working to update our resources on instrumentation programs, and we continuously accept new and updated entries to our stock center database, both available online FASEB website. Finally, we are seeking opportunities for collaboration or coordination with research sponsors, institutions, and all other stakeholders. If you have ideas, please let us know. These are complex challenges and therefore necessitate a collaborative approach. Thank you again for joining FASEB's webinar today. We're now going to shift to the question and answer portion of the presentation. As a reminder, if you have a question, please type it into the box and hit enter or send, and we will be able to see it, and we'll work through the list as they come in. The first question that came in is, why is supporting professional development such as professional membership dues or travel to scientific meetings not an allowable expense for research facilities? Can we change that? Shima?
Excellent question, and I think that it is a very good suggestion that should be considered. Thank you for suggesting that.
Do federal funding sponsors prohibit core savings for equipment, upgrades, or replacements? That's actually a complicated question and depends on the costs involved as well as the funding programs involved. For full replacement of major equipment, generally not though. For very minor upgrades or expansions, typically yes. But again, it's a case-by-case basis, so
Correct.
please talk to somebody who knows your specific situation. The next question is, reporting requirements for instrumentation grants is difficult and challenging. There's no good mechanism for tracking publications, yet the core facilities are being required to do so. Can FASEB help with this? This is something that probably we should be looking for a national group that's actually handling the publications, such as NIH and their PubMed Central Database and NLM.
And from an individual institutional basis, I know that institutional libraries are more than willing to help cores catalog their publications, and I think combined with working with the NLM, I think that we might be able to make this a more broadly used tool for all cores.
We've also heard from some facilities that have set up automatic reporting back from PubMed to just flag new papers coming in that fit the criteria of what they would expect to see out of labs that have used the facility and have published. And that's another way facilities have identified publications. Were minority institutions included in the survey? The survey was open to researchers all over the U.S., biological researchers. We did not collect institutional data. We only collected state level, but we tried to circulate it in as many venues as we could, including through researchers involved in the IDEA grant program, which would target researchers at minority institutions, and less resourced institutions. FASEB is in a good position to interact directly with funding agencies to provide a more stable plan for shared resources. For example, NIH recently considered consolidation and coordination of funding for cores and shared resources across the ICs. Is FASEB now or planning to engage with funders on this topic, or do you have an agenda to do so? Well, I'll let Sheena answer that one, so we have a great answer.
So actually, this came up this morning. We presented to the NIGMS Council, and this was brought as a point of discussion, and we will be pursuing this with them and other IC members in the near future.
The next question is, we often have high personnel turnover because the salaries are simply higher in the private sector. So do we train junior people who then become highly skilled and leave, or is there any other solution?
This is Sheena. It is the cycle of life in the Corps, because we do train our scientists to go on to become contributing members of society. So just like in any educational pursuit, you do want them to go on. The only recommendation I can make is to make sure that you are doing performance review and recognizing contributions of these staff members for promotions that would get them salary increases that would allow you to retain them on staff.
The next question is, do indirect costs negotiated by each institution include funds for core facilities so that sufficient monies for running them can be recouped? Oh, that's also a complicated question. The indirect costs negotiation process can include a lot of factors. You can include equipment that's been capitalized in that rate during the negotiation process. The rate's never one-to-one of what's requested and what's granted. So yes, but it really depends what the institution asks for when they go to negotiate the rate too, and that of course varies institution to institution.
And so a recommendation would be to get more information in terms of how your institution decides their indirect rates and what is covered, and petition that there are costs associated with shared resources that benefit the majority of the institutional members, that they should be part of the indirects.
What are some strategies for core directors to convey the value of shared resources to institutional leadership for strategic planning and funding?
So as we covered today, and as this survey contains a vast array of information for your use, these are the types of things that you should be going to your institutional leadership to argue for. I would recommend taking a close look at the survey, because there are many benefits that we all recognize from shared resources. But the things that come to mind from a leadership perspective is faculty recruitment and retainment, cost savings, rigor and reproducibility, so the quality of the science, the drive toward team science and collaborative science, so promoting both the obtaining of P grants and U grants. And I think there's a plethora of others.
One interesting strategy we heard was looking at how many grant applications mentioned intent to use a specific core. A lot of researchers intend to use it, and since being competitive in funding is clearly a high priority for institutions, that's a great place to look as well. The next question is, will the slides and Q&As be available? It's a great format to share with leadership who may not read the full report. We will post the entire webinar online to be viewed. It should be available within a week from the FASEB website, and we will send an email to all registrants to this webinar letting you know when it's available. In the meantime, as I mentioned, if you go to the Handouts tab, you can always download the report, the recommendations, the survey findings, and then there are appendices where you can see the results to every single survey question, as well as find additional resources on this topic. The next question is, what should a facility director do if a PI who has had analyses done for them did not acknowledge the shared facility or the grant supporting it?
This is Sheena. This is a constant issue with cores not being acknowledged for the work that they do. This requires constant vigilance, and it also requires developing close working relationships with the people that you are collaborating and performing services for. They are less likely to not acknowledge you if you are a true collaborator contributing to the publication. And so taking an active interest in the research and how is it progressing, and can you help with writing materials and methods, or reviewing manuscripts, goes a long way to having you included and being a participatory member of that research project.
And as a reminder, FASEB does have a statement on the importance of acknowledging shared research resources and the facility staff. If you go online to faseb.org/shared resources, you should be able to find that statement, and there's also an accompanying resource with ideas for institutions, facilities, researchers, and others to promote acknowledgement. It's better to try to deal with this before the manuscript is submitted than afterwards. The next question is, what should a facility director do if a PI who has had any analysis, oh, we've already had that one. Okay, the next question. When you are approached about a project, considerable time can be spent by facility staff to research details applicable to that particular project. Most facilities do not bill for this consultation time, unlike law firms. Should they? And should that time be discounted by the institution as a cost of such business?
There are many schools of thought about this. If this is part of the institutional investment in the cores, this type of experimental design would be covered through that institutional investment. There are other cores who actually charge for this, but it is then removed from the overall charge of the project if the project goes ahead in the core. So it is, there's a number of ways that people deal with this, but by and large, this has to do with ensuring the quality of the research, and most people argue that this should be part of the institutional investment that covers this.
Okay, we have a question about how one can break the cycle of needing low recharge fees for a shared facility to attract users, but then not having sufficient funds from these low recharges to refresh and maintain the instruments. And this really gets down to the business model issue that we highlighted in the report. We need robust business models so that those cycles don't happen. And some of that is a facility can address through their long-term planning, but some of it needs to be addressed through institutional planning and through planning at the federal national level if you're receiving also federal funds either directly as a core facility or as researchers who are supported by those agencies use some of their grant funds to use that facility. Ultimately, this just describes a business model that is not sustainable. One last call for questions, and then we will wrap it up. We only have time for one more.
So again, a reminder that the FASEB survey and report is available online at the FASEB website. Really easy to find, and you can download it, share it widely, share it with your leadership, share it amongst all of the investigators, and reminding all of you that this is a collaborative partnership and looking for active partners to address and ensure that the value of shared resources is maximized.
Okay, well, we'll be wrapping up right now. You'll be able to find the recorded webinar on the FASEB website within 1 week, and we will send you an email to let you know when it's available. In the meantime, please download the report and share it widely. Thank you very much.